Is Boris Johnson's career finally, yes, finally over? There are two stories today which suggest it might be. So there was an awkward 3-hour evidence session to a select committee into Partygate. And then I think actually potentially more significant, a real rout in Parliament when it came to the Windsor framework, a phrase I hate using, but there we are. I am delighted to be joined today by Maurice MacLeod. Maurice is a Labour councillor in South London, and you're a policy advocate at Unjust UK. Our audience have seen you before, Maurice, but not with your current title, I think. Do you want to explain what Unjust UK is?
Hello there, Michael. So Unjust UK, we're a relatively new body, been around for about 2 years. And as it says on the tin, our job is to fight systemic racism in the criminal legal system. So all the good stuff that we're aware of, all the areas where criminal justice impacts upon black communities more harshly than everyone.
We are 24 years now after the Met was first found to be institutionally racist. You know, if you said at the time, oh, how long will it take them to sort this out? I can imagine people saying, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, 24 years later. And sort of really important report has said they're still institutionally racist. So what's gone wrong here?
So I was a reporter. I think I might have been political editor back then of The Voice when Macpherson came out. And as much as I don't think anyone, we certainly didn't believe it was going to be a massive change in policing. It did seem like a really important moment. The thing that we'd been saying, about institutional racism had been proven as far as we could see. And so that conversation was over. And now we were going to, maybe argue about how you cure that or what the different tools might be to cure that. And instead, it's kind of felt like we did all the low hanging fruit. We did the stuff that Macpherson asked for about trying to increase diversity within the police force by, recruitment and retention and all those sorts of things, and training, and we introduced the sort of independent scrutiny of the police, which I won't say much about, but I think it isn't really doing its job. But if you look at who makes up those panels, so the stuff that we've done is very cosmetic. And as you said earlier, that even then we haven't, the police haven't got to the diversity figures they want. But I kind of feel that the diversity goal was a bit of a mistake, in that instead of saying, right, we really need to fix these deep rooted things. We found institutional racism. We need to, root that out of the institution. We've allowed the conversation to be about, how many black officers are there and things like that. And so we haven't really seen the sort of deep rooted changes that were needed. And so, just 2 years ago, we had Cressida Dick, commissioner of the Met at the time, saying that, there was no institutional racism. And even with this report coming out now, we've still got the current commissioner, and I think the Prime Minister agreed, and the Home Secretary did, that they're still not happy with even saying the words institutional racism. So as much as there's a load of anger around this report, quite rightly so, and it's I think that the point about other communities being made aware of what the problems within certainly the Met Police, but policing in general in Britain, other communities being made aware by the awful thing that happened to Sarah Everard and LGBTQ groups being aware of how they're mistreated. All of that means that there is more noise now than there was in the past. There is more anger now than there was in the past, but it feels like the same kind of anger. It does worry me that unless you genuinely embrace the need for systemic change, for institutional change, and I think that means a total reimagining of the police. I don't think you do that by, putting a few black officers in or going on a bit of training. I think you need to completely think again about how communities are policed and why communities are policed and who they're policed by and how those police are scrutinized and how the communities have a say in how they're policed and how how resources are spread around their community. Do we want more money being spent on policing, or do we want to go further upstream and make sure that we've got community centres and resources? There's such a long conversation, and I'm afraid because we haven't really had it, and because there's such a determination not to talk about, as I say, institutional issues, because they're so determined to talk about bad apples, we only really scratch the surface, and here we are 24 years later.
Maurice, do you think disbanding the Met and replacing it with a new force, with a new name, would that make any difference? Or, could that just be a rebranding exercise?
What definitely needs not to happen is simply a rebranding exercise. I think that if I can understand arguments to completely disband the Met, and I think that might well be the way things have to go, because I don't think you can sort of fix this ship while it's in motion. I think you need to sort of go, okay, what are we trying to do here? What's the actual purpose of police in our communities? What obviously to stop crime, but how should that be working? And literally start again from scratch. Now, that's not a small endeavor, obviously. I appreciate that, but at least accepting, I think we need to accept that we can't fix this huge institution, this whole huge embedded historic organization, sort of by just sort of tinkering. It needs to be a proper roots and branch rebuilding that needs to involve the communities that are being policed. That certainly needs to involve the communities that are being impacted by the problems in current policing. Now, you can call them what you want. That's not the important thing. The important thing is, how are they going to be structured before we can get trust and confidence, as the Met seems to be going for. You need to have accountability and transparency. You need to be able to fix things first, then you have trust. If we can do it that way round, then the Met or something called that is savable.
The Cloud, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Absolute pleasure, Michael.